right. Question number 9. What was the greatest lesson you learned while hiking?
My greatest lesson was over 2 years. And what I mean by that was when I started the PCT the first time I was going southbound. And for those that don't realize, you have to average about 28 miles a day going southbound to make it through the Sierras in time. And because the Washington border opens up literally for just a few weeks, you have to almost run. I didn't get all the way down because of the fires. That was a different story, but I was on schedule to do it. But I missed a lot of things. I wasn't relaxing. I wasn't taking time in the trail towns. It was like you were just a storm you had to go through. You had to put the miles in. It was watch the clock. I think that biggest lesson learned this year then was to take my time, enjoy it, relax. There's nothing pressing me. I started early and then I took some time off before I went into the Sierras for personal things, but I relaxed a lot more on this one and enjoyed it a lot more. Where the first time it was like a schedule. It's like, I got to do it. And you almost felt bad when we were below 25 miles. It's like, crap, I only did 25. Now I got to make up the 3 where, so it's a mental game going south in a lot of kinds. If you're going to do it through all the way through, which is hard. So I think that was my lesson learned, is just to relax. And a couple of short stories I've shared, things just happen on the trail. I didn't plan them. And I learned the trail gives, right, in ways that you never even figured. So I learned to just relax, take it easy, get into town. We'll figure it out. No big deal.
Yeah. So you were saying, you started southbound and you were on a schedule. At what point would the schedule put you in the Sierra? Would that be like September?
It would be late September, early October.
Okay. Got it.
And It just depends on, how you get through it, because it's just like when you get your legs in the second part, you get a little more miles on it, but you want to really try to get to Kennedy Meadows South before October 1st. That's so you think about that, that's 2,100, almost 2,100 miles in 3 months.
Right.
And you start, as you know, Washington is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But Washington, even though it only has like 25% of the miles, I think it's 20% of the miles, it has 33% of the elevation gains. So you start right in elevation, right in snow, right in river crossings. So you start off really running. So it's just one that every year is different. And some years you can get through later, but the worst is getting caught in the Sierras and some of those spots with the snowstorm.
Right. Yeah. And it's tough too for southbounders because you have no time to get your trail legs. You have to go do these miles. I mean, maybe you could make up miles in Oregon, possibly. But yeah,
still
you have
hard.
to hit the ground running.
You hit the ground running. I mean, you have to hit the ground at 20 plus miles a day, and there's no options. And I mean, it's just a different culture. I mean, I enjoyed it. There's not many people on the trail. You're never fighting for a campsite. You go into town, you're like the first hikers. So talk about trail angel love. It's not like you're 6 weeks in. I mean, it's like, I haven't seen anybody in a year. Okay. It's a different perspective. And going through Washington in July was absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's like the Sierras. I mean, there's lots of snow caps, lots of green. Oregon was a little warm. It's just, and that's where you end up crossing. That's where the bubbles cross, is usually Oregon, between north and southbound. So it's one that you start, beautiful time, enjoy it, but it is one that you do have to pace yourself pretty darn fast. Or you skip around. So some people will skip around. They'll skip ahead, do the Sierras, then they come back. The hard part is Northern California gets just about as much snow in October too. So it's a tough one. It's one that I wouldn't encourage people, if it's their first time out and they're not really in condition to do a southbounder, it's to do the northbound. But if you're in condition, you're ready. I mean, to be on snow day one. That's
right. Yep. Great. And yes, that's right. And speaking of all of this, we're going to move on to the next question, because this is kind of, you're giving some advice, which is wonderful. Do you have any advice for aspiring through hikers? What would be like the top things you would tell people that would say, hey, just Mike, I'm doing the PCT next year. What do I need to know? What are the big things I need to know? What
Yeah,
would that be?
it's a good question. I would say there's a lot of people out there on various forms of media that have strong opinions on stuff, but haven't hiked through things. Okay. Um, their opinions about gear, opinions about weather, opinions about you being able to do something. I just say, don't listen, hike your own hike. Um, Learn a lot of things, try to triangulate and a lot of information, meaning what I mean by that is finding the same answer 2 or 3 different places. That triangulation helps. If it's just one person giving one piece of advice, is that really an advice? And look for people that provide coaching or alternatives. Not this is the only way. There is no only way. So I like people that would ask, okay, what have you tried? What is your condition? To try to, in essence, level set before they give some advice to somebody, right? This has worked for me personally. Depends on your side. It may or may not work. So here's an alternative that you could try. Those are the people that I found very useful. Individuals like PCTs, like Yogi, is really good at that, of trying to give perspective in her book, and things like that. And the other one, I think, too, that I would give people advice is I'm very analytical. I'm an engineer by nature. I love data. What I wasn't prepared for was some of the mental aspects that you had to go through. And I would really encourage everyone to read Pacific Crest Trials by Zach Davis and Carly Moore, because it really helps prepare for the after trail condition and for the things that, when, so to speak, shit hits the fan, and it will on the trail, how do you get through it? There a lot of people have, well, I would reach out to people. I'm like, yeah, but you're on a trail. You may not have cell phone signal. You may not be able to reach out to anybody. So how do you get through that? I think those are the lessons that I'd tell people, is just advice. There's a lot of it. Find the ones that are valuable for you, in your condition, because I was blown away when I first started looking at all these videos, and I'm like, heck, how am I going to figure this out? What tent? Everyone has an opinion on what tent. Oh, light, you got to go ultralight. You got to be under 18 pounds. You got to do that. Okay, really? Trail runners, and it has to be a certain brand. I mean, it was more dictating versus coaching or advice. And I think that's where people have to weed through that information, and find what works for them. And for me, it was then going out and doing shakedowns. I think shakedowns are underrated. And a lot of the feedback, you got to do shakedowns. And I do shakedowns on ice. I know some people it's hard. For me, it's easy in Michigan, but I did a 3-day shakedown when it never got above 20 degrees. So started to realize things you don't think about. Your bottles freeze solid. I mean, just solid. No way around it. People are like, well, putting your sleeping bag. I'm like, no, that's during the day. So you start to learn things that you would not really know when you put yourself on the shakedown. So I think those are a couple of the things I would give advice. Does it make sense?
Totally makes sense. And we at thru-hiker champion that too. Everything you said. Love the book, Pacific Crest Trials. And then, yeah, the thing about giving advice and people kind of dictating what you need, even though they don't know you, totally agree with you. And that's why we like having a bunch of different hikers on, so we can get different perspectives. That's what this podcast is about. That's what these Q&As are about. So love everything you said. And I hope if you're a new hiker listening or watching, you take this advice to heart, because there are a lot of people out there who will tell you what you need to do, but that's not true. They don't know you. They don't know your physical condition. They don't know what's in your heart, and so many other things. So anyway, I love what you said about that. Thank you.